So guys, Senator Victor Ume has come out to say that Gowon owes Nigerians and the Igbos that the duty to write his own book. He should come and tell us how the Biafran war started, what happened, and how it ended. And apart from that, don't forget that the Igbos were being promised that as a result of that war, some of the post-war work could be done in Igbo land. All those things, those promises, none of them is being kept today. So he's saying that Gowon should equally come and give his own account, because IBB has given his own account as regards to the coup and as regards to the annulment of Abiola's victory. Now, Gowon has to come and give his own account about the Biafran war, because guess what? A whole lot happened in the southeast. The Igbos have got to go through a lot. I mean, there's a lot. Now, this person tweeted, as regards to this coup that has been, that people have been talking about. This person tweeted and said, a short summary of the genocide against Biafrans in Nigeria. History of massacre. He said, in Kano 1945, over 200 Igbos were killed. Kano 1980, over 1,000 Igbos were killed. 1966 massacre, that's the post-coup massacre. You see, 40,000 Igbo Christians were killed. Then, May 29th, 1967, over 200 Igbo Christians were killed. Then, 1967 to 70, this is like 3-point-something million Igbos were killed. This is in the bloody civil war. This is the Asaba genocide. Just the Asaba genocide alone took about 3-point-something million people. Then in Kano again, 1980, over 40,000 Christians were massacred. In Maiduguri, 1982 to 1983, over 500 Igbos were killed. Then in Jimeta, 1984, more than 1,500 Igbos were killed. Gombe, 1985. Zaria in 1987. These ones have no figure, but he's trying to say in all these places, Igbos were killed. You can imagine the number of people that have been killed in this country for no just cause. So guys, there's a lot to be told. Honestly, let's be sincere. There are still a lot to be told, and still the hatred is there. We saw under the Buhari's government how in Imo State, the Tokado, or what do they call it, that was meant to fight terrorists, was taken to Imo State. They said they are fighting IPOB. They left Zambiza, where they know that Shekau and his camp were lodging. They left those places. They said they can't enter there, but they go to Imo State. They were busy bombing, and that claimed so many lives. We are talking of the ones that happened years back. What about the ones happening in our own eyes? So guys, let me just allow you to take a look at what Mr. Victor Ume has got to say. Take a look for yourself.
The fact that 1966 coup can no longer be termed as an Igbo coup. What are you looking for in terms of reparation and compensation?
Well, I will say that it was quite relieving that former President Babangida's book has one more time confirmed what we have always known to be the state of affairs with that coup. I have read so many books on that subject matter from the 1980s, and there were so many books on the matter already, even those written by the major participants in the coup. I have read the book by Colonel then Major Adewale Ademoyega, which was mentioned in Babangida's book as one of the 5 majors that were the leaders of that coup, while we struck. That was his own book. There were other books written by other people who were involved in that coup. Someone like Colonel Emmanuel Bosi of blessed memory, Ben Boulier, then Aboyega himself. There was no way we would have felt better than coming from General Babangida, who was later military head of state and was an officer in the Nigerian army, though as a young officer. But having become head of state under military dispensation, you will be clear that he had access to classified information. So he was not just writing as a young military officer when the coup took place. He wrote from the point of deep knowledge from classified information in the military. So that his statement was very emphatic, and truly speaking, the coup was not an Igbo coup. It was a coup, like he posited, by young military revolutionaries who thought that they would make things better for Nigeria by removing the government at the time. And the primary objective was to release Bafemi Awolowo, who was in prison in Calabar. Even though they did not get to the point of releasing Awolowo from prison, events later showed that it was Ojukwu who released Awolowo from Calabar prison. So the coup itself was also not supported by Ojukwu himself. Having come to this realization that is should be incontrovertible at this time, what do we make of it? In terms of reparation and so on and so forth, my own is we should take advantage of this revelation and the clear statement made by General Babangida to begin the process of reconciliation and healing. The Igbos of Nigeria have been held in so much contempt with successive administrations in Nigeria, starting from Gowon, and were put on a very dark spot in the affairs of this country that to organize a coup that killed some important people in Nigeria. But truthfully and reassuringly, this book has exposed that the Igbos themselves crushed the coup. Major Obienu from Nnewi was credited to be one person who played a very pivotal role in crushing the coup. Ojukwu was a commander in Kano at the time of the coup. And I read and also I heard from him personally, because I worked with him for 5 years until his death. He was national leader of ABGA and I was national chairman of ABGA. So at various times I discussed these matters with him to get the truth of the matter. He had telephone exchange with Major Nzeogwu where he declined to support the coup. Ojukwu was an Igbo man and was somebody who played a major role going forward later in history. So I would like Nigerians to bury the hatchet and shift their mind from the narrative that the Igbos organized the coup for selfish reasons. The Igbos did not ask the officers to go and organize any coup.
Okay.
Yeah.
Senator Ume,
on the issue of reparation.
Yeah, he hasn't that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Answer reparation before I ask you.
Yeah, the question around reparation and what would
I should take the issue of
look like?
reparation.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Well, Othman Danfodio said that conscience is an open wound. Only the truth can heal it. So now that it is clear that the Igbos did not organize any coup to kill anybody for selfish reasons, it follows that all the things the Igbos have been denied in Nigeria by the successive governments, starting from Gowon down to the present day even, that Igbos should be seen as Nigerians with the same rights and privileges that other Nigerians will enjoy in the affairs of government. The discrimination handed down to the Igbos because of this should now abate. It should end. Let everybody come to the table with equal rights.
Okay. Couple of things. I want to ask, are you following the way, and let me just establish again for the sake of posterity, there was no Igbo coup. It was just propaganda to hang all of this on the Igbos, and we know what happened then. Even before, Babangida didn't even need to write the book. Before, we had said there was nothing called an Igbo coup. It was just propaganda. And also, the Western media that portrayed that propaganda also, is there any, letter to be written to that Western, because that Western media still exists, that pushed that propaganda big time, and we know that, number one. So, number one, are you also saying that, are you joining the likes of Nnewi to talk about a 10 trillion reparation? I've heard 10 trillion, I've heard all sorts of figures. That's number one. Number two, do you think Gowon too should be able to write his own side of his story? Because he's 90 now, and he also needs to tell some side of that story. We've heard conversations about Gowon saying, yes, they said in some fora, he had apologized to some people. No, we've not had a definitive book from Gowon. Do you think Gowon should tell his own side of the story? And do you subscribe to the likes of some people that are saying over 10 trillion, I think it was Nnewi, and they're calling all sorts of amounts for this reparation? Those are the two questions, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, starting with Gowon, I think Gowon owes Nigerians a duty to write his own account of that war and the things that led to the war and the way the war was carried out and the way the war ended. Because when the war ended, he promised the Nigerian people reconciliation, restitution, and rehabilitation, particularly to the Igbo side of the nation. That he did not implement until he was overthrown in 1975. And these accounts that have come out, particularly from General Babangida, because these things are already available everywhere, preponderant stories told, written by the actual participants in the coup, and the counter coup, and the civil war. All these things are available. So he himself should stop playing the ostrich. He just like Babangida came out as an elder statesman at 80 now, he decided to speak the truth, including on matters of June 12. People should not return certain things unto death. Gowon was a principal person in the whole episode. He was the one that destroyed the regional arrangement in Nigeria and created the 12-state structure from where we had all these things. So he needs to come out and put his statements clearly. And because of the way he handled the war and the way he treated the Igbos, including the massacre of the Igbo people, he owes the Igbo people apology. Incidentally, he could not join these issues when people like General Ojukwu, people like him were alive. But still, his conscience requires that he must tell the truth. He must speak the truth before he leaves the stage. Yes, at 90, he cannot keep quiet and pretend over these things. A lot of books have been written, what he did and what he failed to do to ensure that that war was avoided. He was accused of so many breaches of agreement, both Aburi Accord and the rest of it. If he had kept his own side of the Aburi Accord, I believe Nigeria wouldn't have plunged into a civil war. So he didn't do these things. He needs to write a book. Senator, he needs to write a book and tell his story and apologize. Yeah.
Senator May, this figure 10 trillion keeps ringing in my it keeps ringing in my head. Can you please articulate something and simplify it for me? So, what exactly are you asking for this 10 trillion for, if you are, and what do you intend to do with it? In very simple terms.
Thank you very much. I do not want to begin to talk about figures for reparation in terms of monetary compensation. I think what is important is that at this stage where we are, let's put behind those dark days in our history and go forward. They know what they denied the Igbos. A change in attitude of the present government towards reintegrating the Igbos fully into the Nigerian project and casting away that suspicion that Igbos organized a coup that made them to be removed from their scheme of things in Nigeria. If we put a stop to it, it begins the healing process. It's not something that you use money to quantify in terms of compensation. What we need is a change in attitude. Today is still mourning time in the life of Nigeria. Let them begin to build the infrastructures infrastructure in Igbo land.
In everywhere in Nigeria. Yes, Senator, I agree with you. Let's put aside that money thing because it's so clear and yet very difficult to understand in many circumstances. Let's go to another thing. I think it is clear, it is very good for us to remember that whether somebody is Fulani, Igbo, or Ijo, I want Nigerians to remember it's an accidental thing. And I believe that it is limiting for us to be defined by something that is accidental. I'd rather it be known as a carpenter, a lover, or a singer than really that accidental thing that came to us. Now, the Igbo coup expression, which you seem to say is the origin of a lot of problem that we've had since after that coup, we can call it a Nigerian coup because the people who did it were all Nigerians, ultimately. But I think if we really want to move forward the way you say we should, and say, let us cast away that black thing, it will be important not to consider the rest of Nigerians as evil and say perhaps they make a mistake, perhaps they misunderstand. At least not those in power, the ones on the street. Those ones on the street that are calling it Igbo coup, rightly or wrongly, the reason why they call it Igbo coup, we should study it. Whether you agree with them or not, some of them say it is an Igbo coup because the people that were killed were not Igbo and the ones that were not killed were Igbo. Whether or not that was their intention, maybe they wanted to install Awolowo as head of state or prime minister. The reason why people are saying so is that the victims of the coup, not the counter coup, the victims of the coup itself were non-Igbos, while those who were their peers as Igbos did not suffer their fate. I think this is a historical thing, but I'd like you to comment on misunderstanding of history and perhaps exploitation of facts in histories for propaganda purposes. So if we want to black out, let's talk to Nigeria. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Like you had earlier said about the Western media,
yes,
how they have consistently spinned the stories as the coup being an Igbo coup. It's very unfortunate that even events in history have proven that the coup wasn't an Igbo coup, and the Western media have refused to let go. Even after Babangida's presentation of his book, upon this revelation and statement that the coup wasn't an Igbo coup, some people have started writing again from the Western media, trying to ask questions and posers to make it an Igbo coup. But the principal thing is that from the original intention of the coup plotters, the main man who was to be installed president of Nigeria, if the coup had succeeded, was eventually brought out from prison, from Calabar, by Ojukwu himself. So I think whatever people try to write and conjecture to be able to put a certain people in distrust in the minds of Nigerians should cease. Because I don't think going with that storyline and if you look at the counter coup itself, the Igbos have paid very huge price for the counter coup. For the fact that the executioners of the coup, some of them failed in their assignments, will not make it a deliberate thing to be heaped on the Igbo people. There are people who can be in that assignment, and some of them can be lousy. They will not be able to implement assignments given to them. Some did it purposefully, successfully, without doing it for with any intention to make one side suffer for it more, other than to achieve their purpose, to change government and bring up Obafemi Awolowo to power. So we have to see it at that. Continuing to try to expose the Igbos to national distrust is very wrong. Major Adewale Adeboyege and Captain Adeleke and Ganiu, all of them mentioned in that book, you know where they come from. They are not Igbo people. They were in the plot and the execution of the coup. So because some of them couldn't see their own assignments through, could not be said to be a plan for a coup directed at some people against the other. There were so many things that played out along the line. There was counter coup. Aguirre, who was the highest military officer that assumed the authority of power at that time, the way he proceeded, he fought for the unity of Nigeria. He didn't want Nigeria to be dismembered, but he paid dearly with his own life. He was killed. And at that time, the spirit of brotherhood was very strong. Colonel Fajui, who was playing host to him as the military governor of the Western region, chose to die with him. He was killed together with General Ironsi. So all these things, particularly what politicians started doing and some manipulators along the line, they were the people that sowed the seed of discord that has become so bitter. People want to use that to capitalize on their political interests and gains. I don't see what it should be.
Senator.
I want to know who was released from prison.
Yes.
I'm coming.
Senator Ume,
Yes, the capital of
Senator
who
Ume.
was released from prison.
Yes, just as you wrap up your
became vice
thoughts.
chairman of military council of Gowon.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So guys, you have seen it for yourself. Honestly, it's sad, to see what the Igbos are going through. It is really, really so sad. It's really, really so sad that just for no cause, a tribe is hated to this point. Any little thing that happens, it is the Igbos. Any little thing that happens, it is the Igbos. The Igbos are always blamed. Why? Why have we got to go through all these, Nigerians? This is very uncalled for. Why have we got to go through all this? And now, let me still refresh this list again that this guy wrote. Honestly, it's so pathetic, Looking at this list, you want to cry. History of massacre. Kano, 1945. 200 Igbos were killed. Kano, 1980. 1,000 Igbos were killed. 1966. 4,000 Igbo Christians were killed. May 29th, 1967. 200,000 Igbo Christians killed. 1967 to 1970. More than 3 million Igbos were killed. Asaba genocide. Then Kano 1980, over 40,000 Igbo Christians killed. Maiduguri 1982 to 1983, over 500 Igbos were killed. Jimeta 1984, more than 1,500 Igbos were killed. Gombe 1985. Zaria 1987, Kaduna Kafanchan 1991, Bauchi and Katsina 1991, Kano 1991, Zangon Kataf 1992, Funtua 1993, Kano 1994, Kaduna 2000, Kaduna 2001, Maiduguri 2001, Jos Median Crisis September 2001, Kaduna 2002, Jos November 2008. Then you have the beheading of Gideon Akaluka in December of 1996 in a police station in Kano. Hey, Jesus. And this one again said, St. Maurice died in December 2001, post-April 2011 presidential election. 10 youth corps, men and women, and numerous citizens murdered because a Christian southerner was elected. Hey, God. Just Christmas Eve 2010, Madala Christmas Day 2011, Mubi January 6, 2012. The many Igbo deaths caused by Boko Haram, which of course has the full backing of the northern elites. 2015, Muhammadu Buhari got into government. Over 5,000 IPOB members have been killed and 5,000 in prison. The enemy against Ndi Igbo is deeply seated in the heart of Hausa Fulani of Nigeria. So guys, it's really so pathetic. Honestly, reading out these things, I don't just know how this country can just come back again to unite, because you see, the children that are being given birth to will rise to see all these things and they will not be happy. So I think people who are even calling for referendum, I think it's time the federal government should really check if this referendum is something that is really going to help, so that let people decide and say we want to be on our own or we don't want, because this kind of things can trigger. In short, it's going to build that perpetual hatred, that enmity, which is what we don't want. I don't know what the federal government can do to erase this anger from the hearts of the Igbos, because it's really so sad to see that the Igbos have gone through all this in this country and still They are not being given any privilege. You go to Lagos, they say go back. You go to the north, they say go back to your land. Oh yeah, give us referendum. Let's be on our own. You don't want. It's really so pathetic. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell. Please give this video a like so that YouTube can recommend it to others, and drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you.